Hey, Gola here. If you haven't built Pela already, you're definitely missing out and I'm here to help, but this guide will also help anyone who's already built her to further maximize this amazing unit. We know what she does already, so I will instead focus on explaining her talent and technique and how they work with her energy rotations, as well as how good her ultimate is and when to use it. I will discuss her best builds too, and today we'll look at the win set versus Hackerspace, as well as tutorial versus resolution light cones. I'll finish by talking about who she enables in her best synergies, going through every unit released since 1.0 that she can help out. So like and sub if this video helped, let me know below what you run on your Pela, and let's begin. Hey, Goba is here to talk about the sponsor of today's video, Tower of Fantasy. It's a free-to-play, open-world MMORPG with shared worlds, so you can team up with your friends and fight all sorts of bosses, all with your very own custom-made character. The latest 3.7 update for Tower of Fantasy brings an awesome collaboration with Evangelion. You'll be fighting against angels from the series itself, and who better to help you than some brand new collaboration characters. Asuka is available to summon right now on Tower of Fantasy, and she has some insane moves and animations. And I'm looking forward to seeing Rei if she gets released later on. And if that wasn't enough, you have awesome mecha fights to come. Pen as a brand new servant, collab Frontier Clash missions, and of course, a ton of juicy rewards. If that all sounds amazing, it might be time for you to try out Tower of Fantasy today. Go and use my link in the description or the pinned comment and download now to check out the brand new 3.7 update, and of course, to go pull Asuka before she leaves. Anyway, Goba out. Now, for Pela's kit, you will be spamming her basics, but they don't do anything important. Her skill can remove a buff on an enemy, which can come in clutch, but you don't really use it otherwise. But let's talk about her ultimate and why it's amazing, and how much damage increase it provides. It costs only 110 energy, will hit all enemies, and then reduce their defense by a percentage for 2 turns. A 0% death shred versus level 95 enemies, your damage is multiplied by 0.465, which means your damage is more than halved. Death percent reduction and ignore remove this defense with every percent you get of it, and can turn the death multiplier to 1 with 100% death reduction, which is the limit. So at level 10 ultimate, Pela will reduce 40% enemy defense. That means our damage is now multiplied by 0.591 instead, giving us a 27% damage increase to all damage against all enemies on all characters. This isn't affected by attack percent or crit and can't be saturated, it is just a straight up damage boost. In fact, until you go over the death percent reduction cap of 100%, this will only keep getting stronger. The more death percent reduction and ignore you stack, the stronger additional death percent reduction and ignore becomes, up to the limit. For example, if we are wearing the quantum set and are versus quantum weak enemies, this 27% DPS increase from Pela's ultimate now becomes nearly a 32% DPS increase on top of the boost the quantum set provides. Her ultimate's defense reduction stacks with her technique for 60% death reduction, giving a 47% DPS increase to everyone. The technique has a 2-turn limit, so we want to ult as soon as possible, ideally on that first turn, to get maximum benefit for our DPS. And we'll see how to do that in the rotation section. So we want to ult before our DPS acts, but whilst also considering when enemies will act. If I instantly ult and then the enemies take a turn just after, your DPS will only have one enemy turn to abuse the death percent shred, and thus you won't have great uptime on your DPS's attacks. Unless my DPS is super fast, he won't be acting before the enemies, so I'll want to use my ult before they go, but after the fast enemies move. If you're versus super fast enemies or super slow enemies or have ways of getting the DPS up to your high speed, then you can just ult as usual before your DPS acts. Her talent gives her energy after she attacks an enemy with a debuff. Debuffs are quite common these days, but her ult provides one anyway. This death percent reduction from her ult is applied before she attacks too, and thus her ult can provide and gain energy from her talent. We'll see how high your talent level needs to be in the rotation section. Now her talent cannot be activated by her technique unfortunately. Her technique will reduce toughness of all ice weak enemies, hit one enemy, and then reduce defense percent of all enemies, but it applies after her single hit. If she wants to gain energy from her technique hitting enemies, she needs to hit an enemy with a debuff applied already, say from ratio or Welt's dimension techniques, or from the resolution light cone equipped on her. If none of these exists, she can hit someone she broke the weakness of. Because her technique will reduce the toughness of all ice weak enemies, but only hit one enemy, you'll need to break and hit that one enemy, and if you don't, you'll want to debuff for first turn talent energy. Her A2 and A6 are selfish DPS increases, and she isn't built for damage unless you're crazy like me. Her A4 provides some nice effect hit rate stats for everyone, including herself, which is useful for her hit rate needs for her debuff chances. You want to level her ult up to max, and her basics and skills can be avoided. Her talent level should be from 5 to 9, and we'll see specifics in the energy rotation section. For a full support Pela, even her trace stat bonuses can all be avoided, and even the effect hit rate ones can be too, as she can just run effect hit rate chest, since she doesn't need many stats. If you want to go for a sub DPS Pela, then you can start investing into these traces. Now let's check out her Eidolons. Her E1 gives her 5 energy whenever any enemy is defeated by anyone, which is lovely for clutch ult scenarios or pure fiction. With enough procs, this can shave your non-tutorial 3-turn rotation to a 2-turn one. Her E2 is pretty niche, and I never see it being useful in my runs. Her E4 gives her more damage amping power specifically for ice element DPS on her team, though this extra debuff is pretty useful for other things, like enabling debuff conditions on characters and relics. Her E6 is just more selfish damage for her, and you still don't want to build her DPS until you're bored in the endgame. Now let's talk about builds. First off, what relic sets do we go on her? Well, if you don't care about maximum investment, you'll just want to go to Hackerspace and then Rainbow pieces. You can go for a defensive 2-piece, but you should be tanky enough with her main stats and substats. The other option is to go the Eagle 4-piece, which gives 25% action advance to Pela after ulting. This means she only takes 3/4 of her normal AV to take a turn, basically a 1.33 times speed boost for that turn after ulting. If she ults 4 times, that's a total of 100% advance, and she basically gets a whole new action compared to no win set. That can be 1 extra skill point overall, which is nice but isn't that much. However, the win set 1 allows for lower speed requirements for specific speed breakpoints, and 2 can change when your skill points are generated. For example, on a 134 speed DPS, a 160 speed win set Pela can generate 4 SP before the DPS's 3rd turn, whereas Hacker could not. This can be crucial for DPS with high SP consumption or specific rotations that need skill points early on and fluctuate skill point consumption. It can also help with uptime on your def reduction on fast enemies, but enemies are all different speeds, and breaks and slows can change this, so it's hard to get reliable benefits. For most players, I would not recommend to farm the Eagle set, as the benefits it gives are for min-maxing specific rotations. Also, the Ice set isn't that used, and the Wind set is only for min-maxing supports. Going to Hacker to Rainbow or a defensive 2-piece further drills the point on how cheap she is to build. For Planar sets, you want to go Broken Kill in general, Penacony with an Ice DPS, and Fleet of the Ageless if you have nothing else farmed. Bonwhack Pela can unlock secret text, but that is for 0.01% of the player base. For main stats, you'll go HP or def % chest, with effect hit rate if you struggle in subs or don't activate stat nodes. You'll always want speed boots as well as an energy rope. For orb, you don't do any damage until E6 on a DPS build, so unless you're going for a DPS Pela, just go HP or defense % orb. For a stat goal, get as much speed as possible, with 160 being a potential end goal, but not necessary. With the Eagle set, you can reach 160 breakpoints with 140 or 150 speed depending on your rotation. For effect hit rate, you only need 57% in your stat page, as she will gain 10% from her A4 passive. Then go for FRes, HP and def. Onto Lycone's Resolution or Tutorial. Resolution gives more damage amp with its 12.2% DPS increase when considering her ultimate's Def Shred. It also provides another debuff and is for example needed when she is the sole debuffer in a ratio team composition. It is again another debuff if you want to activate the Pioneer set's maximum buffs on your DPS. It is also a gacha 4-star and can be obtained even after 1.1 unlike Tutorial. Resolution can also provide a debuff for her talent on her technique's hit for an easy first turn ult, which we will see in a bit, unlike Tutorial, which will need help. Finally, it further synergizes with def ignoring Lycones, relics or abilities, like Ratio and Jingliu's Lycone, the Quantum set, or E1 Lunae for example. A downside of this cone is in AoE until you ult, you have no way of applying it to all enemies, so the damage amp is only for a single target outside of 1 every 3 turns. Now, Tutorial provides a faster 2-turn ult rotation, which means permanent ult def shred uptime. This is important for fast enemies. However, you should be timing all your burst damage on that turn when enemies have reduced defense anyway, so the uptime isn't important on some DPS, but is on those that consistently deal damage every turn. It can also synergize very well with the Wind set for a lot of bonus actions. It also means more toughness damage over the duration of a fight, and this with Lunae or Himiko for example, can actually deal a ton of damage in Ice Week content. Tutorial is also naturally better in pure fiction because of this break power, but also because enemies will keep spawning in, meaning your def reduction coming back more often is much stronger. Finally, the technique does not activate tutorial, so you will need a debuff technique from an ally for a first turn ultimate, or you get lucky into Ice Week and hit a broken enemy. Both light cones have their pros and cons, but even if you don't have tutorial, resolution is there for you. Outside of that, you can use Incessant Rain for similar damage amp to resolution, but only excelling in single target or for a DPS Pela build. It is otherwise not as good as the 4-star options. Eyes of the Prey is there for easy effect hit rate needs, and outside of these cones, support Pela does not run anything else. For energy rotations, you want an energy rope, and for a completely skill point positive rotation, which you want to go 99% of the time, you will need 3 basics with any light cone and only talent level 5. When considering the tutorial light cone, you can drop to 2 basics with talent level 7. If you want a 2-turn ultimate without tutorial, you can nearly get one on an SP neutral rotation, with an E1 proc guaranteeing it. And on a basic spam rotation, you'll need to get lucky with hits, or your DPS needs to pop off with her E1 procs, which is fine for the first wave, I guess. Now that's not all that's important for Pela. Ulting on her very first turn can lead to a very nice first turn of burst damage for your DPS, especially when considering her technique's added def % shred. With any light cone, you can first turn ult in 2 different conditions. Either you run the resolution light cone, or you run any other light cone and bring an ally with a debuffing technique like Welt, which can also be replaced by Pela hitting a broken enemy with her technique's hit. This will allow the talent to generate enough energy for a skill on first turn into ultimate, and you want talent level 7. As far as I'm aware, Incessant Rain is applied too late and does not work for the talent. If you use the tutorial light cone, you can replace the skill with a basic, and you'll need talent level 9. All talent levels can be reduced slightly with a 5% energy planar, but I would just level up the talent. So why is Pela so amazing? Well, the SP positivity, the damage amp, the easy build requirements, the toughness damage, the fact she's only a 4-star, the fact she's perfect at E0, her ability to run debuffing light cones, her debuff quantity and consistency. She can enable debuff conditional relics like the Pioneer set, debuff conditional units like Dr. Ratio. She can synergize with any current or future def ignore light cones and Eidolons. She can even remove an enemy buff if you need to do so. She can be used with any DPS and works great, providing a universal damage increase that does not care if you're a dot unit or a follow-up unit. It doesn't care if you skill on attack % or HP % or even def %. Even break damage is buffed by def % shred. She doesn't care, she's based like that. So outside of 1.0 units, how does she synergize specifically with our releases since then? Well, her def % shred can stack on top of Silver Wolf for 93% total def shred or nearly 100% DPS increase, aka doubling your damage. This is great for characters that don't want harmony buffs like break DPS, until you consider action advance or Ruan Mei's break efficiency. They also provide a ton of debuffs for anything that requires that. She provides universal damage increase, meaning Blade can use her as an amazing teammate option, very needed if you lack Ruan Mei and Sparkle due to his HP % based scaling and the attack % focus of most 4-star harmonies. For Kafka and Black Swan, the universal damage increase is great for dot teams if you run dual dot. However, Asta, a 3rd dot unit, or of course Ruan Mei are just better in that spot. Her SP positivity means she can be a nice option for Lunae teams that are struggling with his SP greediness while still providing that juicy def reduction. Jingliu loves Pela as a support option, especially when considering her E4, a resolution light cone, and Jingliu's def ignore signature all on top. Lots of synergistic power, and providing SP for a Bronya to skill spam Jingliu is nice too. Ratio loves her debuffs, and an SP neutral Pela at E4 or high with the resolution light cone can provide 3 debuffs alone for Mr. Dr. Ratio, 4 when considering her technique. This alongside breaks and his own occasional debuffs is enough for his maximum power, and she and Tingyun are a cheap and powerful duo for our free 5-star limited DPS. We will get Acheron info tomorrow, and she could also use Pela fantastically depending on how her kit ends up, both being Nihility buddies and all. So I hope this video helped you decide on Pela's build, as well as maybe give you insight on how strong she is or how to use her a bit better. If it did, let me know with a like, a sub, and share to any others interested. Thanks to my amazing YouTube members, thanks for watching, and have a good day.